There are going to be three different situations that we're going to be able to accommodate with partial fractions. So we're going to have type 1. This is type we've been doing, and this is when we have linear factors. So we can set this up as a over x minus a, b over x minus b, etc. So when we have multiple linear factors, we can set up into our partial fractions like we've been doing. The other two we will do later, but I'm just going to introduce them now. And these are other types that we're going to learn to do. So type 2 is when we have a squared factor. So instead of x minus a times x minus b, we're going to have an x minus a squared factor in the denominator. And when that occurs, we're going to set up the partial fraction in this way here. Okay, so this is our setup for this type 2 partial fraction. And this is essentially a formula that we're going to use when we have a type 2. And we can recognize a type 2 when we have an x minus a squared, so when we have a squared factor in the denominator. And that's going to be different than a linear factor, because with squared factors, we're going to be able to, once we put it into partial fractions, we're going to be able to use log for this part here. So this will be a log because it's a power 1. For this portion here, we'll be able to use power rule. Since it's not power 1, it's a different power, we're going to be able to use power rule. So that's type 2. We also have type 3. So type 3 is when we have a quadratic in the denominator that doesn't factor, and when the discriminant is less than 0. So this is not only non-factorable, it will have non-real roots. Okay, so b squared minus 4ac is going to be less than 0. So it means we have non-real roots, which means it's not factorable. We're going to use a different method when we're going to call this type 3. And this one will happen to use substitution and arctan. So we'll show that later. So right now we haven't done type 2 and type 3. We'll get into those later, but there are going to be three different types that we're going to learn to do.